Okay, we're live. Welcome to the December and final meeting of the Boulder Housing Advisory Board. Michael Lecce, the board chair. I'm happy to see we have great attendance here tonight. We'll do roll call in a moment. So we're calling the meeting to order, and I will ask for positive feedback on my attendance poll. I really came out badly. Corinne Hopkins.
Here.
Paul Bogert. Here. Aaron Clearman.
Here.
Terry Pamos. Sir. Julianne.
Here.
Yeah, Angie. Let's see, Danny Teodoro. Note that we also have our liaison from planning board, Laura Kaplan, present, and older staff. Of the department, very helpful. Thank you. We'll do an agenda review and we'll jump into the meeting. We're going to try to wrap this up a little bit early tonight. I do have some important items, so we won't push it too much. Item 2 is reviewing the agenda. That's what we're doing. Item 3 is approving the minutes from our last meeting, which was on October 25th. We'll have public participation with open comment after that. That's item 4. Item 5, matters from the board. We're going to be hearing a presentation on older middle income rental needs assessment. That's an informational item. Presentation by Melissa Klein, a Master of Urban Planning candidate at the University of Colorado, and Holly Hendrickson. Always happy to see Holly in our meetings. Senior Project Manager, Housing and Human Services. Item B under 5, we'll discuss our letter to council that we want to get to council before they meet for a retreat. You all have drafts that I've circulated ahead of time to discuss that. Item 6, matters from staff. After that, we'll have a meeting debrief and a calendar check, and we will adjourn. So going back to item 3, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 25th, 2023?
I'll make motions.
You got a second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Before we get to public participation, let me ask if there's anybody in the Zoom waiting room waiting to speak.
Yes, we have one, and Danny just got here as well, so I'm gonna get him pulled over so that he can speak as well.
Danny Teodoro has also joined us
Yeah.
via Zoom. Jay, would you like to review the rules of conduct for public participation?
I would be happy to, thank you. All right, I need to share my screen. So I'll go through this fairly quickly. The city has developed a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. See if I can turn this to, there we go. So support the physical and emotional safety of community members, staff, board, and commissioner members. For more information on this, there's a website that you can go look at. And following our rules of decorum that we've established, they'll be upheld during the meeting. We ask that all remarks and testimony be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation, obscenities, racial epithets, and other speech or behavior that disrupts the meetings is prohibited. And participants are required to sign up to speak using the name that they're commonly known by. And we ask that individuals display their full name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted. And our chair will be enforcing those rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And do we have guests in the waiting room who would like to speak? Lynn Siegel, recognizing Lynn Siegel, you have 3 minutes, Lynn.
First of all, regarding housing, the people of Gaza haven't got any housing. And when the people of Gaza, 2.3 million people, have had their place demoed around them. It makes me feel nervous about my own housing, that we could very easily have another 9/11 right here in Boulder, ground zero. Or some other random city in the US. Wouldn't make me feel any better. So that's a priority, is to stop this war, end the occupation of Palestine. The other thing I wanted to bring up is a theft that I experienced at the municipal building. I was sure that it was homeless people, but guess what? It was a city employee. And in the middle, you know, the camera that I'm paying for, the surveillance camera, identified the person from the children's department of the library. And in the middle of his being interviewed by the police, he stopped in the middle of a sentence and took the Miranda, his Miranda rights. It was declared to a probable cause for a summons, and Michael Dougherty declined to prosecute him. And I'm not allowed to talk to him. I haven't seen him. I don't know his side of the story. There's no restorative justice. This is the kind of thing that brings crime to Boulder when people don't have housing or they have a hard time getting housing. He's a young employee. I'm probably paying for his leave without pay, but I don't even deserve to know that. I don't deserve to know anything about him, and he stole from me. So I'm shocked that this has happened to me and that it's gonna happen more and more as more and more people are desperate because they have no housing. And the homeless shelter, I don't know what the costs were on Folsom, but I'm sure they were cheaper than opening the present homeless shelter 24/7. I mean, we're talking about charging people in Boulder for not occupying their landlords, not having their places occupied. Well, our own homeless shelter's not occupied half of the time, and we're paying hefty for that. So what's the difference in price? I would know why this distinction between those two places. And the library funds are going to pay for it. And that comes from me. And I'm going to be homeless soon at this rate, with the property tax rising as fast as it does, from 5,500 to 8,500 this year for me. So please.
But I'm sorry, I'm really sorry to hear about your theft, and I appreciate you raising those issues, but your 3 minutes is up. And I hope you can get some justice in that situation. I feel badly about that.
Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the waiting room who would like to speak during the public comment period? No one with me? Great, thank you. We'll move on the agenda. I just want to make sure everyone saw the Daily Camera article this morning about the Boulder homeless shelter taking on the day shelter job. And I haven't read the article yet, but I don't know if that's permanent or a temporary solution. I think it's great that it's going to go somewhere, and I hope the homeless public can do that without being overwhelmed, or that people in the neighborhood don't get too up in arms to that, because we do need that facility somewhere in Boulder, and maybe that's a logical place for it to land. I don't know. Just commenting, actual opinion there. I want to be sure everyone's aware of that. Okay, we can go on to matters from the board, and this is time for an informational presentation, as I announced earlier, from Melissa Klein and Holly Hendrickson, who are both present.
Okay, so I am not going to do anything tonight. It's all Melissa. I'll introduce her here.
Nice to meet you.
So I'll just give a little preface to kind of how this came about. So maybe this summer or this spring, we were kind of hearing chatter in the community about middle income rentals and like a need to provide some more services in terms of middle income rentals and that's something we don't currently do. So, and we didn't have much data to support any kind of work around that. A few months later, Melissa reached out and asked, looking for kind of a placement for her capstone projects. And I was like, heck yes, this is perfect. So she's been working really hard the past few months and, you know, I'll leave the results and the discussion to her, but very happy with your work. So thanks for being here. Take it away. Thanks. You should be able to.
Okay, so I'm Melissa, and like Holly said, I've been working on this middle income housing needs assessment for Boulder for the past few months. And I'm excited to share what I found with you all. So first I'll give a little introduction about myself and then give a background and purpose of the project and then some main takeaways and then do a brief discussion of the data collected and then wrap up with a conclusion and then we'll have questions, but if anyone has questions during it, you can also just chime in. So a little bit about me. I moved to Boulder in 2020 for grad school. I'm doing a dual degree with the law school and getting my master's in urban and regional planning. And I'm interested in studying the intersection of planning and law. And post-grad, I hope to just continue learning more about it. So, like Holly said, I came to the city of Boulder and was connected with her for this project. And I thought it aligned well with my educational interests. And also since I've been renting in Boulder for a little over 3 years, I was personally interested in what the outcome of the housing needs assessment was going to show. So the purpose of the capstone is to determine whether the city of Boulder's existing supply of rental units meets the current demand for middle income residents. So I did this by looking at the current housing demand and the current housing supply. And then there's also a forecasting section in the housing needs assessment that shows potential changes in demographics and housing needs up till 2028. And then using that information to estimate any unmet housing needs. So we defined middle income as households earning between 80 to 160% of the area median income, but really focused on households earning 80 to 120% for the housing needs assessment. And this is just a high-level table of contents for what's in the actual housing needs assessment. I'm not going to go over all of this today, but if you're interested, you can, Holly will have the final assessment. So the 5 main takeaways from this project were that middle income households do not have enough ownership opportunities affordable to them. And that's causing middle income households to move out of Boulder and be replaced by higher income households. And then low income households living in rental units don't have enough rental options affordable to them. And that's causing low income households to be increasingly cost burdened. And then finally, middle income households living in rental units, they might be limited by unit size gaps. So the number of bedrooms in the rental units might not align with the household size for renters. So starting with takeaway 1, middle income households don't have enough ownership opportunities. So the median house price in Boulder is over $1 million, which is pretty much doubled what it was in 2011 and a pretty significant increase from 2017. And this chart on top shows how much the maximum price that a household could afford based on different income levels. So middle income households would likely fall in this range, being able to afford a house from $300,000 to $499,000. But as you can see, there's a pretty significant deficit in houses that are available at that price range. And then there's a surplus of houses that cost $500,000 or more. There's just not enough households able to afford that price.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Is this Boulder City or Boulder County?
Boulder City.
Okay, thank you.
And that kind of aligns with the homeowner vacancy rate, which according to the census in 2022 was 0%. And it was decreasing from 2011 to 2017, but 0% is pretty low. And then the rental vacancy rate has actually increased since 2017. Which leads to takeaway two, that this lack of ownership opportunities is causing middle income households to move out of Boulder. So the total population in Boulder decreased from 2017 to 2022. And most of that decrease came from residents under the age of 19 and those between the ages of 35 to 64. But there were also increases in the number of residents between the ages of 65 to 84. And then breaking that information down further. So the red shows decreases and the green shows increases. And this really shows that households with a householder between the ages of 25 to 64 making under $150,000 a year are leaving Boulder, and those making over $150,000 a year are moving into Boulder. And then I thought this bottom chart was interesting, that households with a householder 65 years and over earning $200,000 or more a year increased by 437% from 2017 to 2022. Then takeaway three, middle income households likely have sufficient rental unit options, but low income households do not. The income distribution in Boulder shows that most households are earning less than $75,000 a year. And similar to the for sale maximums, the rent maximums show the maximum amount of monthly rent that a household could pay based on their household income. And so likely middle income households could afford to pay $2,000 or more on rent each month. And there's a surplus of units. So middle income households probably aren't the ones facing these cost constraints, but this really shows how much of a deficit there is for lower income households. And that's leading to lower income households becoming increasingly cost burdened. So the middle income households would be those earning $75,000 or more, and their cost burden less than 20%. And then that really switches when you have households making less than $75,000 a year, they're increasingly cost burdened. And
Question, that 75,000 a year, does that include student households?
yeah, all of the information includes students. But if I had to guess, they would mostly be falling into the earning less than $75,000.
Right, but that would increase the
Mhm.
people in
Yeah.
that range because most students are not making,
Yeah,
you know, maybe a part-time job. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
yeah,
And it's shooting 75,000 a year, is that household income or per individual? So two people
household.
in Boulder?
Oh, 69% of all renter households in Boulder are cost burdened. And the number of households that are cost burdened actually increased from 2017 to 2022. And most of this increase is coming from households that are severely cost burdened. So those paying 50% or more, spending 50% or more of their income on rent each month. And then when you compare the city of Boulder's rates of cost burden households to those of Boulder County in the state of Colorado, you can see that the city of Boulder has higher rates of cost burden households and higher rates of severely cost burden households. And then the median gross rent as a percentage of household income has increased from 2017 to 2021, while the median monthly owner cost as a percentage of household income has decreased. And the median gross rent as a percentage of household income is 46%, while the median monthly owner cost as a percentage of household income is about 18%. And it's expected that renters would be spending more of their income on housing costs each month, but that's a pretty big difference between renters and those living in ownership units. And then finally, takeaway 5, while middle income households likely have sufficient rental options affordable to them, the rental units might not suit their household size needs. So this is a breakdown of the number of bedrooms in renter occupied units in Boulder. So most rental units are 2-bedroom units. And then the second most common are 1-bedroom, and then 4-bedroom is the third most common. And this shows deficits for studio or 1-bedroom units and then 2-bedroom units. And I made an assumption here that a 1-person household would be looking for a studio or 1-bedroom, and that a 2-person household would be looking for a 2-bedroom unit. But it was also interesting because 4 bedrooms, there's a surplus of 4-bedroom units by kind of a lot of units. So then to wrap it up, there are not enough ownership opportunities for middle income households in Boulder. Middle income households with a householder between the ages of 35 to 64 are moving out of Boulder and are being replaced by higher income householders. And based on this data, there are likely enough rental units for middle income renters, but the size of the available units might not meet the renter needs. And low income renter households continue to be cost burdened at very high levels. So, thank you. And if you have any other questions.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. I don't know if you're aware that the board has been focusing on middle income housing in Boulder for most of the year. And more information helps us devise possible solutions. So much. And good luck with your studies.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Do you have any solutions, like based on findings?
Yeah.
Most of my recommendations had to do with updating the land use code to kind of make it easier to build less expensive housing and make sure that Boulder preserves its current share of middle income housing.
So Melissa, what kind of recommendations are you making in that regard? Because that's also something that we've been wrestling with over here. And this is Dan, by the way.
I don't know if you just heard, did you hear what I said?
Yeah, he's been here the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was I didn't put a lot of recommendations in the report, but most of them were to just update the zoning code to make it easier to build more affordable housing.
Okay. Which is absolutely something that we've been working on, so that's good to hear.
But what is used for your data sources? Used ACS and like City of Boulder, what's on their website?
Yeah, it was
Was there
mostly,
anything else that you used by chance?
it was mostly the census, City of Boulder, Social Explorer, but that just pulls from the census. I'm pretty sure that was it. The projections used a third party, but I didn't talk about any of the projections and this stuff.
I'm always curious about ways to measure things like how much land is owned by different demographic groups, or how many empty bedrooms there are, or how many vacant houses there are, things like that. So if you happen to run across any of those things as you were looking for the data you were looking for, I'd be very curious to know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I found most of that in the census. Yeah,
The vacancy one is interesting in the census because the vacancy rate breaks down by different types of vacancy, which includes like vacation homes. Like, those vacancy numbers are fascinating. You can dive into those some.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Question, did you mention what you're planning to do with the research further after this, like where the next direction of this project is?
no, I'm handing it off to Holly.
Okay. I was just
Now,
It's good.
But I mean, this will be extremely helpful for us, particularly as we, talk about this issue with our city council. Because we did the housing needs analysis, but that was way back in 2015. Where we found that 99% of all rental units in Boulder were affordable to middle income. So we knew that that's been eroded with rents increasing significantly over time. So it's super helpful to have that information for us. And understand where to focus our attention. So my question though has to do with the rental vacancy rate. So what does that tell you about our market?
So they're still considered in like the healthy level, but you wouldn't really want them to get much higher. There's no like standard rental vacancy rate that's like good across the board. You kind of just have to compare it to like past years in Boulder and keep it around that level. So I don't know, the increase, I guess you probably wouldn't want it increasing much more just because it was lower before.
Or wouldn't that, if it was increasing, wouldn't that theoretically put downward pressure on rents?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good for renters, but then I guess it wouldn't be very good for people trying to make an investment on their rental properties or like make people want to rent apartments.
yeah, the vacancy data, you use like a 2011 and then a post-pandemic number to see the trend, like to try to identify a trend for like. And it is trending up. Those rental vacancies are trending up.
Do you think a lot of people left Boulder after the pandemic?
I don't think so. I think we were just trying to like in the data, try to not reflect like the exodus of the students during that time.
Oh, yeah.
To try to adjust for that. Like,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Does the census often account for students? Because I feel like most of us aren't like legally residents of Boulder anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, it does,
Okay.
because it's the households that are living in Boulder. Yeah,
True.
Includes all students.
yeah.
That's true.
Oh, well, no, sorry, not all students living in Boulder.
So I have a question. Was there any thought to sort of doing a deeper dive in terms of household size? Because it seems to me like if you're a single or you're a young couple, then there might be a greater appetite to live in an apartment. But historically, in my mind, once you have kids and then you start factoring in things like, what's the school and do I have a backyard? And then there might be more of an impetus to move out of town because you really want to have a single family detached home with a yard. Whereas I think of many places like in Europe, for example, where there are apartments or condos that are big enough and people just expect to like raise a family in Paris. And the expectation of like a single family home is very different than what Americans expect. So long-winded question, but was there any, did you do a deeper dive into like family size and how that might relate to affordability or the decision to move in or move out?
It did not, but most of the households in rental units are non-family households. I think like 75% are non-family households.
Okay.
And I found information that said most renters don't have kids. I remember like 90% of renters don't have kids or something.
When you say non-family household, does that mean they don't have kids or it means a single person?
It means they're not married.
Not married.
Yeah, or not kids, they're not related to the people in the household. So like you could have roommates.
Or
Yeah,
housemates, okay.
yeah.
And I'll just add that the question about the household size is really tricky here because we're, as the data showed, there's kind of like a demographic transition happening here where there's like an aging population. And with an aging population, that changes household size dynamics. And so trying to adjust for like what that looks in a forecast to what we have now, to what we might want in the future, to what we will have if we don't change, so that's a tough one to answer because we're seeing a more aging population movement.
This came top of mind for me too, when she was presenting, because it's kind of people have a lot of expectations around how much house they should be able to afford at different stages of their lives. And I have some anecdotal evidence that suggests that I've known small, families where it was 2 parents and 2 kids, and they lived in a smaller condo compared to a single family home. And they moved out to Lafayette because they wanted the full, enchilada, so to speak. I just like, for me, I always want to like resist the notion that we all need to have single family homes and that there's like a path to affordability through single family homes for all families, so I'm not saying anything you were saying was like, not sensitive to that, but I just always want to repeat every now and then to just say there is some extent to which people will have to like adjust their housing requirements in this path to affordability. I guess maybe that goes without saying. I don't know.
But if we were to take what you said, right, like if let's say you have a single family home and you want to downsize, I feel like there aren't a whole lot of options to reduce the square footage of your house. And even if you don't necessarily reduce the cost of your house. And so some of the solutions we might be talking about is a greater variety of housing types and housing prices, right? But I think you also raise a point which like is this expectation that if you have a family, you need a house with a yard, right? Even though there could be 4-bedroom units that are adjacent to a park or that have a jungle gym or whatever. And so people get to vote with their wallet.
Off-topic question, the program you're in, JD Urban Planning? That's kind of, are you in it now? You're doing it? That's really cool. So is it a 4-year program?
Yeah.
So you get 3 years of JD and then 1 year of.
It's like 2.5 years in law school and then 1.5 of the master's.
Of the master's in urban planning.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
Yeah.
Great deal.
Yeah.
What's it called? MERP.
Oh, Masters of Urban
Masters in Urban Regional Planning. Isn't that right? Yeah.
Smooth. Well, that was a smooth. JDUP urban planning.
Seems like you did a lot of statistical analysis here. That's really what this
Mhm.
project is. Did you do anything in addition to that, like site visits, interviews, something that's really statistical?
No, I really just dug into all the data. Yeah.
And do you have any analysis of demographics by saying ethnicity beyond?
Yeah, that's in the full report. It didn't show me a lot of information just because I feel like most of the residents in Boulder are white, and so it didn't show anything like, I guess, very notable. I'm not really sure, like, yeah. It's in the actual report though.
Gonna get a copy of it?
Yeah, Holly will get the final report tomorrow.
If you're nice to Holly.
I would think it's tough because even in the residential rental world in the last couple of years, with COVID and the fires, it's been such a whirlwind of change. I mean, there was a point after the fires where there was like 2 properties for rent in Boulder, like, because everybody needed a place to live, so they just flowed in everywhere they could go. And then COVID, and then a lot of the hourly, I don't know if it's middle income, I don't know, but the hourly jobs increased by a lot in the last year. And so the data is tough because you're looking at, you're doing the census, which is a couple, 3 years old, right? 2 years old. And then there's today, and there's so much that's changed between then and now. I mean, you would think it would change that much, but it has. And so you have kind of new criteria. It's wild. The residential rental world is really different than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Really different.
Well, I'll just say that the American Community Survey that she did use the data for came out in September for last year. So it's not ancient data, but
Hopeful.
and of course, it's all kind of like statistically sampled, so it's not counts, it's just, stats, but best guesses,
Pretty good guesses.
pretty good guesses.
Very good guesses.
Comments, questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very nice.
Thank you.
There's excellent food out there. So it's delicious.
Thank you.
And you don't have to stay, but you're welcome to stay.
Grab seconds before we get to the next agenda item.
So Jay and Holly, how is HHS gonna use this data? Maybe that's obvious, but spell it out to me like I don't know anything.
Well, I would love. If I'm speaking out of turn, just tell me.
Okay.
I think there's some great data in terms of the, demographic trends that we can identify to present to council to kind of help tell our story about what is going on in our housing here, especially in terms of the middle income scene. So I would hope that some of this is just used to kind of help tell that story in a more clear way.
In terms of middle income folks leaving older,
Middle
and
income.
population aging.
Yes, yeah, there's like the whole story, but I think we kind of all have like an intuitive sense about what's going on, but the last data points were from 2015. So it'll be nice to be like, we just looked at this, this is what's going on now.
What she said.
Yeah, okay.
That's
And
correct.
so it sounds like,
You're a high income family, no problems, right?
Yeah.
And if you're middle income, you're probably leaving Boulder, and if you are lower income, you're very cost burdened.
yes,
And the extent to which that includes students, like what percentage of that lower income population is students?
so this is. I'm not sure what percentage of the population includes students. I don't think you can pull that up the census. As far as I know. But that lower income probably does include students. But, we talked about this and we're looking at like the market dynamics here. And we're looking at the rental market and the ownership market. And to just take like a whole population out and say that they shouldn't be counted. I don't know, it didn't feel right since they are contributing to the market dynamics.
So I understand, I just like, when I was a student, I absolutely spent more than 50% of my stated income on housing. But I also had, other sources of income.
Sure.
Beyond just what paycheck said. So,
Yeah.
There's family, there's student loans, it's all of those things. So,
Yes. In terms of that cost burden, like what percentage of that cost burden is students and where are those funds coming from? Beyond our scope.
Right. I do think there may be questions about, if you're saying this huge chunk of the population is extremely cost burdened, to what extent that is the student population, which I'm not saying students don't count, but
Mhm.
being cost burdened as a student can look very different than being cost burdened as a working adult.
Sure.
So
It's like
not
there's
that
an end
students
game.
aren't working adults, but
What was the median middle income? Again, the middle income, the parameters, the low and the high.
It was a range because it kind of depends on the size of your household, but. So it could have been anywhere from a one-person household making $70,000 a year to. Pretty much somebody make an 8-person household making $198,000 a year.
So would it be safe to say a two-person household, middle income would be 100,000 a year? That'd be so,
Yeah, pretty around
is that a safe assumption?
Yeah.
So two people making 100,000 a year, which around here is very doable. To rent a place for 2,500 to 3,000 a month. And that would be about 30 to 40% of the total income, so it's kind of on the border of cost burden, right? What's it supposed to be at 30%?
30.
So a little more. I think there's a lot of that happening in Boulder. I think there's a lot of that example.
Can I just go back to what Laura was saying, so sort of your summary of sort of the big takeaways? So I would put a slightly your point on just saying that what I think the big takeaway for me is middle income, yes, they can still afford to rent in Boulder. They're not cost burdened. It's when they make that decision to buy. And so for me, it's not it's not a lifestyle choice. It's not, having kids. It's when you make that decision, yes, I want to stop renting and I want to start buying. That's when people are leaving the city.
Exactly.
Because would that even extend to like if there were condo units you could buy? Now, and I know there's not a whole, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot.
That's my point. The ownership, the gap between what you can rent and what you can buy is just enormous.
Correct.
Was the median home price that you gave for single family homes or for any unit?
For any ownership of
Any
owner
unit.
occupied units, yeah.
Yeah, because let me clarify, in my mind, there's more single family homes to buy, but there aren't a whole lot of condo units to buy.
Correct.
And that's an impression, that's not based on data.
That's right.
Absolutely accurate. The condo production has just plummeted in the last, how long,
Decade.
15 years?
Since 2008.
Because of
Construction defects. So the point that you were making is they're moving out because they want to buy, but because they want to buy single family, because maybe it's like you can't buy many condos. I don't know.
I think they can buy more outside of Boulder.
Yes.
So they can get, even if it's not a single family house, they can get a condo that's bigger, more bedrooms, like she was saying, they can't always find a number of bedrooms that might be suitable for their house.
Well, and then look at the gap between renting a expensive apartment, let's call it 2,500 a month, and a mortgage on $1.2 million house. A lot more than 2,500 a month, especially at the current interest rate. So, and actually I talked to my son about that. He's 28. He's like, yeah, I'm going to keep renting for a long time because the economics of buying aren't there at this moment. But there are people still very motivated to buy, and they'll drive until they fall.
And then your last point about low income folks being increasingly cost burdened. So I guess my advice is not to get hung up on the student issue. We just know that people working in Boulder that are low and moderate income are severely cost burdened.
Yeah.
And that's why the city's focus is on providing affordable amenities.
Danny.
So I think one of the interesting things, we were just touching on it before, but with all this data. Sorry, it's hard for me when I can't talk. But is really that whole notion of, we also need to be kind of cautious of the false equivalency, because if people are leaving because they want bigger houses, bigger yards, newer houses, etc., right? That's not a arena that we can really kind of delve into, right? Boulder's an older town, it's got older units. I'm sitting here looking at my house. I have aluminum windows from 1971 in here, right? You can see it right behind me, actually. And so I think that's one of the big challenges that I think from that data that we need to figure out is who's leaving because of the type of units they want and who's leaving because of the affordability of the units. And those are two different things, right? But there are probably some people leaving, like we're talking about big yards, new houses or whatever. That's that's just the one thing for me. That's one of the cautionary tales, because that's not something that we can really delve into. It's just not part of this community, and there's no way to change that now at this point in time, as it's pretty built out, right? So,
And I would just add, Danny, too, and it's hard to predict, right? So
right,
what are the housing needs? We know the household size is changing. Household dynamics is changing. So that's why, the approach is to provide a diversity of housing types.
yeah,
We're
exactly.
not trying to dictate, yeah, no, we need more, family housing. What we do know is we need greater diversity.
Right. But I think Philip's point that he was making about just the whole notion that, it's not just single family and it's not just ownership. There's other types of living that you could do when you live in a certain community. I mean, I think that's really salient here because I think that's, got to be part of it. Even if you're middle income, there's to me, there's a huge benefit to live in Boulder as opposed to other communities that doesn't have anything to do with, your finishes or the size of your yard, et cetera. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to try to figure out here as we go along, because it is really challenging, right? And I just the other thing I'd say is I was pretty stunned at the demographics in terms of the age. I didn't realize it was that much in terms of the 65 plus that were migrating in. Was it 400 and something %? So that's pretty high.
Because they're just growing into it.
It's 65 plus that earn over $200,000.
200. All right, Michael.
You're moving, you're growing.
I'm a pragmatist and number's been used for years that there was about 60,000 people that work in Boulder who don't live in Boulder. And I don't know how that's changed with work from home and the whole post-pandemic workplace. And we're not gonna bring all those people back to Boulder. It seems like or even capture all the new people moving to Boulder County. It seems like a reasonable goal would be ensuring that our public schools have kids. There's a few basic things that we have some diversity in our community. Things that they're somewhat measurable, but also a little intangible. And I think that's what we're after. We're not trying to solve all the problems and provide the right house or home for every single person who wants to be in Boulder. But if we can help some of them achieve that goal, then we have a better community, a more complete community. So, and that kind of gets me to some of the points in the letter, and not to foreclose on this discussion, but we could move into that part of the agenda.
Later it is.
That was smooth, man.
Melissa, after hearing the Housing Advisory Board for the city talk about this issue, does it raise anything for you? Any thoughts that you want to share? Say that.
Think so, but I don't know. I'm interested if any of you read the full report, what your thoughts are on it. But yeah, I like this project. I thought it was really interesting. All of the data points that came out of it, though. But, yeah.
Well, thank you for your contribution to the city. And
Yeah,
good luck.
And for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melissa.
And if anyone's gonna read, it's gonna be this group.
I promise I will send you. Okay, the next agenda item is regarding a letter to council regarding read the 2024-2025 city work plan, the housing. This is an informational item, but there are probably some points in it that we'll want to debate, that healthy debate around. I think, well, first of all, I just want to say how grateful I am to work with all of you when I here, but I feel like we had a good influence on the council, and they made some significant policy changes that reflect our values as a board and as a community. And I know from talking to people on council that they listen to us, so that was really an important thing. It didn't solve everybody's problems, but it means we're not just sitting here blowing smoke and talking to ourselves. So a lot of this letter, the way I've drafted it, and it's open to any changes. it really is just kind of a summary of where we've come from, and then a little bit more on where we're going. The way I've written this first draft is really just encouraging council to monitor their progress, continue to innovate, but be pragmatic, seek practical, achievable goals. Don't look for silver bullet solutions. There's not one thing we're going to do that's going to fix all the housing problems, much to Jay's point about housing diversity. But there are a couple of things that it's hard to discuss outside of the meeting because we have to all be together. And a big one is the future of the airport, something we've chewed on pretty well in the last year. And apparently there is a decision point, some call it fork in the road, coming up with council fairly early in 2025, and it might behoove us to come up with an actual recommendation on that. I don't think we have to do that tonight, but it would probably be on the agenda in January. And the other thing is really brand new. We have kind of a lot of this one and keeping for the middle income, missing middle issues. And kind of introducing the idea that we can have something positive to say about housing the unhoused. Not trying to solve the whole problem in a broad sweep, but like what can we do given the opportunities for us? So what occurred to me, open for any discussion, is that we have maybe an opportunity at a moment in time with kind of a pause in the commercial real estate market, potential to convert some underused buildings to transitional housing. How can that be done? There is a nonprofit called Bridge House in Boulder that does that. That's their mission, and they're good at it, but they only serve maybe 70 or 80 people, I think. And they focus on folks who are willing to commit to work, who are to commit to sobriety, and are also willing to pay some portion. They give them jobs, and they have to pay some portion of their income to basically get a bunk bed in a facility. I think it's a pretty humane model compared to sleeping on the street or under a bridge. And also they have a very high success rate for those folks transitioning into permanent housing. I think after 2 years, it's like a 75% success rate. So it's really curious to have a discussion how to amplify that idea or see if we have a role in discussing it, if the city can take a greater role. What are the opportunities, and is that something we would want to include in this letter? Now, this is great in the world. Lots of folks have fallen on their sword trying to come up with all good intentions, policies that can help the unhoused. And it gets contentious, it gets disagreeable. Certainly not my goal to introduce that kind of conversation. I could see, again, focusing on those who we are most capable of accepting help and moving ahead with their lives, and not trying to solve, meth addiction. That's just a really hard issue. So anyway, that's my opening comments. I'm going to open the floor. I'd love to hear what people have to say.
Can you clarify, is this letter what we are going to be working on in 2024, or what we're recommending that city council focus on in 2024?
This does relate to our work plan with a couple of new introductions. And the point is to give council food for thought as partly a new council. I think it's still going to be very pro-housing, and they're going to have a retreat in, is that March?
March, yeah.
March. And they're used to the idea of getting a letter from HAB with some high-level thought. It might set the stage for actual recommendations later. So this is my effort to see that conversation.
So I have ideas.
Just every year, Karen, we have a letter to council every year. I've been here since 2018. So we always, this is off of that model too.
They're expecting it.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, so Michael's proposing potentially to send it this month. council, they haven't created a subcommittee to plan their retreat. So they haven't asked the committees, boards and commissions specific questions, which is what they usually do. Typically, it's very targeted in terms of what feedback they want. So you might have to do another one in March, which is fine. I think you can recycle a lot of it, but just want to be clear.
Right.
What Michael's saying is this is food for thought for council
This is.
as they are thinking about what their priority should be for the next 2 years.
Did I misunderstand? I thought that they did not ask last year either, though have provided. Is
Yes,
that true?
And then is the retreat in January or is it getting pushed?
push to March because it's a new council.
So does it actually make any sense for us to approve the letter tonight and send it on, or is it premature in your opinion?
My opinion, it doesn't hurt if you guys feel strongly about or feel good about the letter. You should, why not send it? Doesn't hurt anything.
Will that make anything redundant or will it make it superfluous if we're gonna send another one in March? I guess would be my question.
I just see it as being a re-emphasis a bit later, especially when we can get a little bit more specific on the issues that we bring up. We do it again in a couple months.
I think my vote is to wait because I'd like to flesh this out a little bit. I definitely like what you did, but I have some suggestions and I don't. And one of my suggestions is if we had something that we wanted to present to council and we got the support of other organizations that said, hey, these 5 organizations think that city council should focus on these housing issues, then it's not just coming from HAB, it's coming from HAB and Better Boulder and whoever else we can get to. Yeah, whoever else we might be able to get to agree with, and that might create a bit more weight.
Karen, I'd be a little reticent with that. I mean, I think in terms of this being our direct communication with council, I'd be reticent to throw in other groups because I think it changes the tenor of the messaging and everything. And so, I mean, I think one way or another, it's useful to have a letter, right, from HAB rather than saying, in conjunction with these other organizations. But I also think maybe it does make sense to, hold our powder a little bit right now, though I'm not quite sure. I could be convinced either way. For whenever it's gonna resonate more with council.
Aaron, when you say other organizations, are you specifically thinking of non-boards as opposed to seeing if TAB has anything that we're in agreement with and doing it that way? I don't think I thought that through so far, and I understand Danny's perspective, like, it is hard to get consensus among various groups. So not that I'm retracting, but maybe I hadn't thought through my suggestion as well as others who've been on here longer enough.
I think there's opportunities to do what you're saying. I don't know that opportunity is in this letter.
Okay.
There's opportunities to collaborate and get multiple groups together based on a specific issue that maybe council asks us about or something like that. But traditionally, this letter's just like, hey, council, this is what we're doing, this is what we think. This is us. The tones of the letters have gotten so much better in the first several, which were like political attack ads, so terrible. But this is really nice. There's a lot in there. It covers a lot of territory, which I think is good.
Yeah.
What was the latest on the airport? Because I know we're flying around with some different ideas. The latest guys had, yes, we want to be on the airport, or no, we don't.
I've heard there's a vote coming up on the airport in March, maybe Phil, who's
I actually haven't
not
heard
as
any
involved
updates.
the working group
Do
is.
you have an update or?
I actually talked to Natalie today, Natalie
Okay.
Stifler, the Director of Transportation. And so the next steps for her are, they're doing a big report on the community conversation that Phil and I were both part of. And that report will be delivered to council in January. Basically, here's the engagement effort that they did about the future of the airport that Phil and I have been reporting on. And then in March, likely in March, they plan to go back to council with the results of staff's research that council asked for the last time council talked about this. And that is a financial analysis of, what would it cost to run the airport on our own? What would it cost to try to get out of our grants assurances with the FAA? What would it cost if we have to litigate? So that's the financial analysis piece. There's a legal analysis about what would litigation potentially look like. And then there is a statement from the FAA that they're coordinating, like what is the FAA's position about Boulder decommissioning the airport, which I think we know what we can expect there, which is no,
Yeah.
don't do it.
Right.
There will be more detail on that. So staff are going to come back to council with the results of all of that research. And then basically, my understanding from Natalie is ask for direction, given what you now know about the public engagement and what happened there and the research that staff did. Do you want to continue down this pathway of looking at decommissioning the airport, or do you want to close that door and invest in the future of the airport? Basically.
What's in March?
That's March. So it could be a watershed moment where the door closes forever, or as far as this council is concerned, closes forever. Which would likely result in an airport master plan that would try to build out the airport and make it bigger. Or, more accommodating to jet traffic and that sort of thing. Or council could say we need more information, or council could say we want to pursue decommissioning, go down that path. So they're going to put the question to council. What council does is unknown, of course.
So what I think is interesting is if you think about the presentation that we just had and the conclusion, which is that there isn't enough middle income housing. I think it would be, if what city council is gonna do, or what staff is gonna do in the first quarter of 2024 is talk about all the costs and burdens and obligations and hurdles associated with the potential decommissioning of the airport. I think if we want to balance that, we should talk about all the potential problems that we solve if this 200-acre site could be developed into housing for middle income and lower income, different property types, different populations to support our schools, whatever. Like, I think what we really should encourage is an exploration of the potential of what the airport could be.
And that was not done through the community conversation. It was a very, very basic vision of you could have a neighborhood and that neighborhood would have housing and commercial areas and open space. That was like the extent of the vision that was provided. And that has been one of the things that I have really pushed throughout that community conversation is the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan basically promised that at the time of the next airport master plan update, the city would work with the community to evaluate the potential for housing and neighborhood serving uses at the airport, which in my mind, people can read that sentence and think different things. But in my mind, that means more like what you're saying, Karen, of how could this property, if it were a neighborhood, help the city to meet the goals that are in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan? And more than that, what is the unique potential of having a piece of land that is not built out, that the city owns and therefore can use it as like a subsidy to get the kind of housing that we want? There just aren't that many opportunities in Boulder where our housing stock is already built out. It is older. It is not necessarily the products that people want in 2023 and beyond. So I'm excited by what you're saying. So I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah. This letter almost sounds like a recommendation, but probably me not being subtle enough in drafting it, but you're saying make the case for a neighborhood with mixed diverse housing, rather than saying decommission the airport, period. It's look at all the benefits you could get, and that's very persuasive.
So I would move this up to the, like, how you have two sections, right? Like, I think this should be priority. Like, let's do an evaluation of what the potential is while you're looking at all the costs and burdens and obligations, so that you can do sort of is it worth all this potential cost and litigation and whatever? Look what you potentially could get.
Somewhere along the way, I heard an estimate on what it would take to decommission and legal for this and that. And then I heard an estimate on what the land value would be to Somebody did that. Didn't somebody do that?
So what I can tell you is that if we had to pay the FAA back for the land that they helped us to buy, it's 79 acres that would have to be sold at fair market value, and then that money would go to the FAA. And that's just for if we have to pay them back for the land. There's a legal argument to be made that we might not have to pay them back because it was purchased so long ago and the agreement's right. But if we did have to pay them back, 79 acres at market rate, you can do the math. If you pay $3 million an acre, that's what, like, or $2 million an acre, it's $150 million or whatever. So that's the cost. That doesn't include the cost to litigate or anything else, right? And then if we sold all of the land, 179 acres, excuse me, sorry, the whole airport is 170 acres. And you could calculate what it would go for at market value. The portion that the FAA helped us to purchase is 49 of those 170. So there's 49 that the FAA has a claim on, 130 that they don't.
Sure.
What's the 79?
I'm sorry,
Oh, 49.
79 was me making a mistake.
49.
Erase that.
49.
49 acres that the FAA helped us purchase, 179 total of airport land. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the numbers, if you were to sell it to private people, you would generate enough money to all the litigation, pay the FAA, that would work. Those numbers work. The benefit is more, right? And then you just gotta plan it out, figure out how much of it's this and that and the other thing. But do we want to today make a decision to suggest yes decommissioning? Or no, don't decommission, doesn't sound like that's gonna go, or we want to have it fully explored before we make a decision?
Yes.
Well,
I think that's what Karen is.
yeah, yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
If you can clarify what's gonna happen in March, best as you know.
Yeah.
Let me ask, is this just like another ramp to be taken or not taken, or is this like a really big decision point? Like, is the housing future of the airport gonna die in March?
It very well could. So what Natalie expressed to me is that they need some clarity because, and by they, I mean the transportation department and staff in general, because there are decisions that have to be made. Like if we keep the airport, this whole debacle around unleaded fuel, how do we encourage getting off of leaded fuel and getting onto unleaded fuel? The city could take steps to subsidize the unleaded fuel or do other things to try to make it actually happen faster than it would otherwise. They need clarity around that. This idea of, are they going to continue to pay consultants to pursue litigation potentially? They need to know, should we keep our consultants on contract or end the contracts? This idea of, we currently have a pause on accepting FAA money to do airport maintenance and repairs, right? The airport manager wanted to take money months ago and the city council said, no, we're not going to take any money until we make this decision in March. So they need to know, can we take the money or not? So staff really want clarity of, are we really going down this pathway of decommissioning? Are we really going to keep doing this? Or do we close that door and go down the pathway of the airport master plan as if we're just going to keep it?
Right, but going to the latter option A, it could be just a decision to continue exploring.
It could be, and you folks could make that recommendation. It sounds like, Karen, that's your thought, is to say, hey, don't close the door in March. You haven't fully explored the benefits.
Is that what you're saying, or would you be more inclined to just like recommend decommissioning the airport?
Well, my gut is, let's decommission the airport and not make it an airport anymore. But I think that we're not going to be able to convince people to make that decision until we understand both sides of the pros and the cons, right? So if the city is already going to do the analysis of the costs and the obstacles and the steps and the litigation, we need to know, why are they going to do all that hassle and all that money unless there's an incredible benefit? And as the data showed today, like, we're losing population of middle income. It's being replaced by older people who are wealthy. Our schools are losing enrollment. Like, we have this, everyone seems to acknowledge that we have a missing middle. And so if you're going to do this, all this analysis of like, all the obstacles and hurdles to decommissioning, let's dangle that carrot of like, but here's what you'll get in exchange for it. Like, here's the sort of utopian solution to Boulder's housing, middle income housing. So.
So I absolutely agree. I mean, here's what I'd say. I've been litigating for 25 years. First thing I ask a client before they litigate is, what are you trying to accomplish? So what is the goal, in other words, right? And so I think, Karen, what you're saying is absolutely true, because what that does is it sets a very palpable, tangible goal for everybody, so that everybody understands why we're going to take it on. Because it's not like, all right, we're just going to litigate with the feds and we'll just check a couple of boxes and that'll be done. Litigation's never that way. The FAA is not going to go into it to lose either. They've got their own agenda as well. But I think the whole notion here is that if we have something concrete, instead of saying, hey, wouldn't it be great, we could put some houses here, which is kind of the way it's been. I think the master planning of the airport can really help congeal the support in the community to taking on what's going to be a very arduous step to get to that next level, right? And so I think what I like, instead of saying, hey, vote to decommission because there's so many things there that are outside of our purview, I think the whole notion of saying, really start planning for, analyzing, and then giving proper weight to what can be done in the alternative if we get there, is kind of what I like to see in the letter, and kind of what I think really works here, because that's really the question. And like I said, before you make a decision to jump into something like litigation, you always want to know what it is I'm trying to accomplish. Is it money? Is it a good idea? Whatever it is, right? And I think from that perspective, the more concrete we have something that we can share with the community, that we can all kind of circle the wagons around, the better and more successful it's going to be if we need to move forward on that next step, which hopefully we do.
Well, I mean, to try to answer that question, Danny, I think people in this room would like to see, basically 6 holiday style neighborhoods in one cluster of development that's pretty close to the core of Boulder transportation. That could be the shining object that you aim toward. I mean, that's pretty specific.
So I have a question, like, it's always easier to negotiate if you know what your opponent wants, right? So the FAA wants the airport to continue in operation. And if we ultimately can convince them, like, we don't really want to do that, but here's something else that you need, right? Like, do they need pilot training, or do they need, I don't know. Is there anything else that they might need that we could give them in exchange, like a piece of land so that they could have simulators or repairs, or no? Or is it?
They just need a judge that tells them, no, they can't have an airport here. And it's not-
What about emergency services, helicopter pads? That doesn't take up that much room.
Well, that's built into that scenario. Like, if we do have a neighborhood there, that would absolutely be
Oh,
part of it.
okay,
That
so that's
the
good.
emergency services would not go away. There would be a helicopter area in whatever this new airport neighborhood might be. But my understanding from talking with everybody in that airport community conversation, and Philip, it looks like you're having the same impression, is that the FAA is not going to negotiate. The FAA wants the airport as it is and growing. There's nothing that we can do that will convince them to decommission just part of it, or to, they've already done that with a very small parcel, which was the Velo condos right there on Airport Road. But the bulk of that 179 acres, they're not going to relinquish at all.
But they don't have any needs, right? Like, don't they need more air traffic controllers, or they need more, like, they must have some need that, no.
Not enough to
No.
shut down the airport.
So this battle here in Boulder for them is not about Boulder. It's symbolic of the whole system, the whole network. They don't want airports anywhere to close. It sets a precedent. It shows a pathway for how to do it. They don't want that to happen. And understandably, from their position, their job is guarding the civil aviation network and growing it and expanding it. It's not reducing it.
And Laura, if I'm not mistaken, that's their approach to any community that tries to take this step, right? That's kind of their
My understanding.
and approach, right?
Yeah, I think the only successful decommissioning without protracted litigation was Chicago. They had a downtown airport that they, right after 9/11, the mayor had the city work crews go out and dig up the runways overnight. And then he went to Congress and basically said, we're not going to have an airport in downtown Chicago. It's a terrorism risk. Right. So it was a very special circumstance and a very hardball negotiator in that mayor. We're obviously not going to do that here in Boulder, but to get the FAA to back off.
So now I'm building.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything yet.
it seems like, it seems like, the task before us is small. In the sense that all we're trying to do is think about what we might say ahead of a March meeting for city council to encourage them to keep the dream alive.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And I think you and I are on the same page for the most part. I do want to just caution a little bit of, I don't see the airport as such a silver bullet solution to housing problems. It is a really nice opportunity that I think I want to, tackle with gusto. But that said, I do feel like some of the work that HAB could do around preparing for what's next in the Boulder Comprehensive Plan 2025, we keep getting this messages from people like Carl saying, well, there's only so much we can do with tweaking zoning on the margins because this is what's in the BBCP, right? So I love the notion of decommissioning the airport. I hope it happens. I want to do what we can, but I also just sort of acknowledge that it's like one piece and there's lots of stuff.
I agree with that. I mean, we're proposing, 8 different things to investigate potentially.
Can I add one?
Sure.
So I've said this a few times, but it'd be great if you guys could include in your letter our work plan item to basically apply some sort of linkage fee to demolitions of residential homes.
So
Yeah. Michelle Allen was talking about when she came up.
enough.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
Terrible.
You might get outvoted on that one too.
That's fine. You know how expensive it is to knock down some old anywhere.
Gonna make it more expensive.
Then don't do it.
I thought it
Then
was.
don't do it, right? That's the whole thing.
That sounds
I
good.
thought it was more than.
1971 windows, don't complain.
Yeah. They're just fine. They just suck in January. They're fine.
I'm sorry, Michael.
It's more than a demo fee. It's a fee based on how much new square footage you would propose to build.
So it could potentially also apply to large additions. Yes.
That seems to make sense.
So, but we'd have to do the nexus study to determine what we could apply and if we could apply it.
It's gonna help
So
affordability.
you're asking HAB to support your nexus study of doing some kind of fee to support affordable housing when an older home or significantly expanded.
Exactly.
Well, everything that we heard today, everything that we've talked about, and the whole notion of the lack of supply. And so every time, if you take a lot of the homes, I've been in South Boulder my whole time here. So you take a lot of those old homes in South Boulder, every single time one of them gets bulldozed or remodeled, it gets turned into a giant trophy home from the demographic that we saw in green in lieu of the demographic that we just saw in red in that presentation. So I think the whole notion that as having a very real on the ground effect at the opportunities, and that one goes to rentals too, because to the extent that we were talking about people wanting to, if you have kids and you want to live in a single family home, etc. That's the model that you have in terms of what's affordable that you can rent. I know plenty of people who live and rent in a lot of those homes. And what happens is those rentals then get turned into trophy homes, people that might not even live here, the whole year. And it changes the entire profile of what we're looking at, right? Those are homes that families can rent and live in. They're usually somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a month. They have yards, they have little garages, they have storage, etc. So once that home's dozed, it's gone. So of course you can't stop somebody from doing that, but I think the whole notion that say, just like everything else, there needs to be some linkage fee, there needs to be some accountability for the effects that that has on the overall community, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think once we do the study, we absolutely need to do that study, but once we do, I think we're going to find out that it is, pretty well defensible too, given the particular circumstances. So I think it's huge. We talked about that a few months ago. I think that's a really, really big one.
Just to clarify, they're not bulldozed, they're deconstructed. I encourage anybody to go watch an old house be deconstructed by the city of Boulder's requirements and standards. Go out there and see what happens and how it costs 4 times as much to deconstruct a house instead of bulldoze it. Big
Okay.
improvement. And then when you pull the permit, actually, if you're I check myself. If you deconstruct a house and then pull a permit for a bigger house, you don't have to pay the inclusionary housing cash and lieu, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to do that in that situation.
Right.
So that's maybe a sideways say, a linkage fee might be a sideways workaround to actually paying for cash and lieu, no matter if there's a house there. It may be
And that's
saying the same
exactly
thing
what
2
I'm
different ways.
Right. And that's the
I
way
think
we
that
talk
might be-
So, to the extent those two things are somewhat synonymous, I mean, I think that's the point.
That may be the point.
Yeah, they can't do it with the inclusionary housing program that they have now because
Yep.
it's not supported by the logic behind that program, which is
Yep.
why they have to do this linkage fee study, but it's the same concept.
Same idea.
Yeah,
We're paying inclusionary zoning for any new house, no matter if there's a house there or not.
yes,
But we're gonna call it a linkage fee in this situation.
correct.
There you go.
I think that's.
That's correct.
Yeah. But I wanted to say, just to Danny's point about it's a small house in Martin Acres or in South Boulder that's being deconstructed to take your point, and replaced with a trophy house. So this is one of those concepts from that missing middle book, which I forgot to bring that for you, Karen. I'm sorry. I'll get that for you. That we currently are not allowed to take that same building envelope that could be a huge, 14,000 square foot trophy home, which they are going up, and divide it into 8 units or 6 units. We can't currently do that with our zoning code, but this comp plan is an opportunity to explore an idea like that, which is it's the same building envelope that you could do with a large single family home and you can divide it into multiple units, but we'd have to do like an infrastructure study and some other things to support that in the comprehensive plan. And that's what Carl Geiler was saying. That's a step too far. We can't do that with zoning for affordable housing. The farthest that they went was you can have a duplex in a place where you could subdivide or a triplex in a place where you could subdivide. But this idea of taking that same building envelope and dividing it up into smaller units and selling them, that's not supported by zoning for affordable housing. It could be done through the comp plan revision, potentially. It's at least an idea that we could ask.
There's a whole single family zoning lot discussion we've had for a while.
Exactly.
Which is a great idea.
So I would really like to see that in this built, like elaborated on in the memo to council. And then getting back to your concept of like the unhoused. I realize that it is a can of worms and that we don't necessarily want to get into like all of the permanent supportive housing treatments and caseworkers and amenities that are provided, but I would like to see some exploration of different housing types. So there was recently an article, and I can't remember where I saw it, which talked about like group homes where people rent a bedroom, and then there's like a community, community kitchen that's shared and bathrooms that are shared. Or, I know people talk about how you can't convert an office building into apartments because there's not enough windows and all those kinds of things. But if you could convert those into SROs and or hostels, like if we could start exploring cheaper opportunities that aren't necessarily what most of us think about as a 1-bedroom apartment.
Right, and to your point about office buildings, you know, all office buildings are not the same. There are big downtown Denver office buildings that take up a whole block. Those are the ones that are hard to convert. There's maybe low FAR buildings that are not very large buildings, so could be converted. That's one of the things Bridge House is doing to the storm style. So not to, I just want to comment that I think it's going to be too hard to wordsmith this letter tonight and adopt it. So can we do that round robin and adopt it in January? Would that still be timely?
I think so.
I was gonna make a suggestion. That might be a path forward. Because I mean, it takes effort, right? If you took the time to write the letter. So if you want to flesh these ideas out more, I think I would say it's the board, each individual board member's responsibility to take that on. So one option is to basically support Michael's letter, send it off, and you could include some language that says we will flesh out these ideas more and share it with council prior to your retreat in March.
When is the council activated? Are they already?
Last week.
Okay. Yeah, the sooner we can get them a letter, the better, just to like introduce ourselves to those new members and let them know what we're about. January sounds good.
Michael, would you want to take another stab at it based on what?
Yeah, I mean, I got some notes, but I agree that only one or two people have actually sent me comments, and that's very valuable. It's easier for me to take those through an email and digest them than to try to do it on the fly. So if you wouldn't mind taking 20 minutes before the new year and doing that and sending me, I'd be happy to, you know, do some of this editing, revising. I think there's just fantastic ideas. I'm very pleased by the tenor of this conversation.
And remind me, what's the impetus of sending it to them in January versus February versus March?
Sooner the better.
Okay.
Well, at some point, they might ask us to answer specific questions that could either result in our letter if we waited for that to happen, or we could send a letter and then send another letter responding to their.
Yeah, we get like 2 bites of the apple.
I kind of like the two. I'm sorry. I kind of like the 2 bites of the apple thing. I like the whole notion that this is
Yeah.
our opportunity to reach out to them and introduce ourselves, and you know, be able to you know, use our own discretion in terms of what we communicate. And then certainly if we have things we have to answer, be it in March or whenever it ends up being, that's fine too. So I like the 2-letter approach. Mike, I promise you, I will get you red line comments by Tuesday morning. I promise.
I'm gonna come break through your single pane window and take it from you if you haven't delivered.
So
Yeah, but I have a storm window behind it. It's so it's
Good.
double
Put some
pane.
plastic up there with some duct tape that helps.
We do. We do every
So-
January.
Me too, I do the same thing in my bed.
Shrink wrap.
I built
It's a matter of
houses.
process. And we
The warmest spot in my house is out on the outside, right in front of the window.
don't even know which house you're in. But it's a matter of process. Can we accomplish this through a round robin of emails, or do we have to like meet again in January and vote on it to approve the letter? Before forwarding it to council.
I would say it depends how much you want to change it. If you're just making minor tweaks based on people's edits,
So far, I'm
say that's fine, but if you're gonna,
hearing is to make more of a case about the airport instead of just saying, you know, keep the housing option open, which I thought was a great.
My
suggestion.
sense, can I say something? My sense is that I'll take that opportunity to weigh in as much or as little as we want. Like I have some thoughts that have been kind of stirred up in this meeting that I'll probably, you know, I intend to send to you. So, right, so if we could meet again and talk about the latest draft and vote on it.
Right, but that would have to be an official
January.
meeting.
No, what?
Would have to be an official meeting.
Right.
Can we
Right.
schedule an interim meeting to do that? Does that make sense?
I don't.
Appetite?
Do it.
good.
It would have to be a posted meeting, right? With us.
Because you feel like doing it in the already scheduled January meetings too.
Well, it's December 13th and our next meeting is gonna be like January 25th or something. It's a long
It's too
stretch.
early January. Early January special meeting for the wedding. And just talk about that only.
We have
What's the notice?
a new
required?
draft with red line comments and.
Not that onerous.
Oh, we could, so public notice wise, I mean, even if we just tabled it, you know, tabled this issue or continued it to that date for a special meeting, then there's not actually a full-on public notice thing, but I don't want to usurp that, but it's very practical to do. We can do that on a Zoom conference to make it easier for logistics if we don't have a space that we could use or something like that. But I think that's a good idea.
But it still has to be a public meeting, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, right, absolutely.
So do we want to look at dates or no?
Michael, I would say it's part of the process. What we've done with planning board is like, I've given a draft letter to planning board. Either we've discussed it in a meeting or people have sent me comments and then I consolidated it and then brought it back to a public meeting. So I think that is kosher as far as process. What you can't do is have everybody sending everybody's comments to everybody and commenting on everybody's comments. You
Right,
you
that
can't.
would go to me.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the concern about just doing a draft, sending you our comments and you coming up with a draft on January 25th, whenever that is? It just has to do with
I don't
it's too
know.
far away.
Maybe it just
To me-
seems like
to me,
a
that
long-
seems like
a
a-
long time away. Time is always of the essence. If it's not an issue, we could do that. We could just stay the course and by the way, don't take that 25th. As gospel. I haven't checked the actual date.
24th.
24th.
If you want to do a special meeting, I would recommend we do it Zoom only. It'll make it easier for us significantly.
Yeah.
It
It would have to be a super long meeting. Would we have to incorporate the public comments and all that? Maybe we have to.
Realistically, the first is a Monday, so if we did the third, that would be 3 weeks before, but is the third too soon after the New Year's? Then if you go to the 10th, then it's really only 2 weeks we're gaining. When realistically is council gonna read this?
You could argue both ways. I mean, the easiest thing is just to wait till January, our regular January meeting.
Is that agenda very full?
No, Christopher Johnson will be here to talk about the comp plan.
That's a big item.
That's a
It
big-
is,
that's a
but
big- It's a big deal.
it's not
Will
gonna
that
be
make
3
us
hours.
change our letter?
Change our letter after hearing about.
Then we have to draft again after that. I do think council will be eager to hear whatever we have to say, especially the new members. You know, they'll be like, oh, this board cares about us, that's cool.
Like,
We do.
like,
I'm available on the 3rd.
We can make it work.
there it is.
I can do it.
Cool. Around the same time.
Danny, can you do the third?
Yep.
On Zoom.
Works for me. Great, well, the other big item to discuss in the letter is what we want to even weigh in on. Homeless transitional housing
Absolutely,
strategy.
absolutely. It's the,
It almost seems wrong that we ignored
you
it.
can't talk about housing without talking about unhoused,
But maybe we don't use that word.
unhoused or homeless.
I don't know,
Which one?
like,
Is not okay. I can't keep track.
well, I think if we talk about like really affordable housing solutions, right? Like HROs and
That's right.
group houses and,
Hostel type stuff.
yeah, dorms
Dorm,
and
hostel, bunk bed. Just. get a roof
micro
over somebody's
units,
head.
pallets, like just explore the options for deeply, like let me back up. I had mentioned in a previous meeting that it would be really good to sort of explore why does it cost $700,000 in theory to build a unit, right? And so one of the things we talked about is how can we create units that are less expensive on a per unit basis? So if it's a dorm
Less linkage trees.
or an SRO or a group house or something, those are all ways where like the cost to an individual is significantly less. And whether we call it housed or homeless, I just think It's all about deeply affordable.
Well, I do think the
That's not the
city's,
only issue.
the city's housing strategy for the homeless includes giving them homes that they do not pay for, that the city is subsidizing. So it is a little bit of a different issue. But what I hear you saying, Karen, is building the ladder, right? Like, how do you go from a subsidized transitional unit to being able to afford your own place? Well, you need those really deeply affordable units, and that ladder, that rung of the ladder is currently missing, just like the middle income rung is missing. We're missing a couple of rungs.
What I hear from you is, I think what I hear from you is, like, how do we just get somebody with a roof over their head off the street and into a building with a roof over their head,
That's not-
whatever that looks
That's not what I heard.
That's not this.
like. No,
Is that what you were saying?
Well,
no,
I don't know. What do you think I said? Because you said it's more complicated than that. So what are
I
you
wasn't
referring to?
trying to interpret
No,
what you were
no.
thinking or saying. I was just chiming in to say that a roof over the head is not all that's needed.
Agreed, but this board shouldn't be addressing mental health and addiction and those issues. And so like almost everybody, or my understanding is that if you have a mental health issue or a disability, that you can get income from the government
Yeah.
that will subsidize some of your rent, right? And so I'm less focused on where is the income coming and more, do we have a variety of housing types and options for all different income levels? And my understanding right now, like if you look at Lee Hill, that was like a 600 square foot, 1 bedroom, right? Like that's an expensive unit to build, right? But there used to be housing options for people where you rent a room, then you have a hot plate and you use the bathroom down the hall, right? Or you live in a house with a kitchen that you share with 6 other people, or tiny homes and pallet homes as like interim solutions until something is built. Like we don't have any of that as far as I.
Right,
I think
but
the
as
boarding
you
house
know,
is currently not legal.
Lee Hill is not
Sorry.
just a 600 square foot apartment. But, you know, it's a whole suite of services in the building. It's probably very expensive to operate.
True, but the units are like really nice size 1 bedrooms.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Not to-
Cheapest part of it.
Not to go all over the place, but what Denver is doing, which was modeled after what Houston started doing 6 or 8 years ago, I think is a great idea. And it seems to be working, but it requires the city stepping up and, you know, I don't know, you can do it here, 'cause you don't have as many options, but buying old motels and just, you're at least not on the street, you're in a motel room. You got a shower, a bathroom, you got heat, a light, you have a charger for your phone, you can at least, I mean, we can't do that in Woolwich because you're not buying up motel rooms in Woolwich. But it sounds silly when we talk about it legislatively. How about some of these old, really old, ugly office buildings? You know what I mean? You know? And I'm not saying convert them into residential, but it's a roof over your head and bunk bed it out and make it like a hostel. A lot of us have been through Europe in hostels, and you just walk into a room and there's a shared bathroom and it's somewhere to sleep that's not outside.
Yeah.
You know, it's somewhere to sleep that's not outside. And that to me helps a lot of people who can do it and all that, and it gets rid of the encampments and.
So Jay, would that require a change to the Boulder Valley comp plan to allow for boarding house type situations, hostel type situations? Because I don't think those are currently legal in Boulder. Or is that a state level issue?
No, I mean, like the shelter, Boulder Shelter for the Homeless is a legal use. It's a condition, because you just have to go through a process.
Oh, okay.
So but that's sort of a nonprofit run. So if you're a private, you know, landlord that wants to convert an office space into, no, that's not.
That's not allowed, right? So would that require a comp plan change, or what would have to change to make that be allowed?
I think you'd have a hard time getting the community to agree that that's a good idea.
Yes.
It's
that's
better
true.
than sleeping on the street.
But what's better? Is it better driving? Anyway, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it all depends where.
He's
So,
talking about
in your
It might be,
neighborhood,
it might be a
they're not
hard sell, but what would be required?
I'm sorry?
So given that it would be a hard sell, it would not be easy to accomplish, but what would have to change? Is it just zone? Is it an ordinance? Is it a comp plan?
Zoning.
I think it's zoning. I don't think it's the comp plan.
Okay,
Mhm.
so it'd be an
We're talking about
ordinance.
rezoning commercial to allow for like hostile type redevelopment as residential. Using.
Yeah, I mean, there, you have to change the use of the building, which has
Right.
different building code requirements. It's very expensive. You have to upgrade it. You have to.
But
do-
I'm saying, forget all that. I'm saying, I know, I understand checking all the boxes. Anyway, we got a reservation.
Yeah, well, again, going back to that Bridge House example, and this is no ballpark. You think, oh, I'll take a 3-story commercial building and put a bunch of bunk beds in. That sounds really inexpensive and effective. It's like $100,000 a bed, because you have to do code upgrades, you have to put the kitchens,
Forget all that. It's a bed inside of a heater room, man.
Cheaper than sweeping encampments.
Totally.
So you currently have a bullet point on that second section that says for 2024 and beyond, HAB will investigate such initiatives as, and you have a bullet point that says, while continuing HAB's focus on missing middle housing, discuss solutions to provide transitional housing for a portion of our unhoused population. Incremental, not one size fits all, focusing on housing, not police or social services. So I think what I'm hearing is maybe rewrite that a little bit,
Mhm.
but it sounds like this is not something that you're gonna agree on the solution, but maybe you can agree that you want to talk about it.
Right, I agree, and I like that approach.
And what I mean, be more specific in what I was trying to convey, which is. This is a solution for people who are capable of a fairly high degree of healthcare. It's not gonna get the. Crystal meth addicts or the people with severe mental health problems who are screaming on the street, not gonna work for them, and that's. It's a little controversial, actually. Some people say, how can anybody get mentally well if they don't have a roof over their head? We should just house them and then figure out the rest of it. And others, like Jen Livovich, seem to say, that doesn't work unless you lead with the treatment. I don't even want to get into that discussion. I just want to say, there's people capable of improving their lives with some form of housing, and let's try to provide it. Without getting into mental health counseling and drug addiction, policing and all that, because.
Well, that kind of goes back to your
About
earlier
that.
point about not framing it in terms of unhoused folks. Like, it's more about how you kind of said what you said about filling in those ladders of the housing ladder, right? And I guess for me, I'm all for having a lot of housing types at a lot of price points, and I would definitely be in support of some dormitory style housing, or however you want to call it, SROs and
Hostel type, okay.
hostel type stuff.
So-
That sounds great to me. but-
Great. So the big question for me is does this belong in the HAB universe?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
That's the biggest issue up, and like we have consensus on that.
Yeah.
I do, I mean, I think it is worth just kind of reiterating why we've been reluctant in the past.
Mhm.
Because everyone is thinking about this, and I don't want to like come in to this issue like shooting from the hip, like, oh, let's just do this and let's do that, when it's like there's been so many people that have gone before us that have thought so carefully about these issues, and there's a lot of ongoing efforts that are underway now, and so I like, in some respects, I think we have to be cautious in terms of thinking about how we can engage with currently going efforts and not just be making more noise.
Right.
Sorry.
That's why I like Karen's
I
point.
think,
that-
I think make all the noise you can make, because whatever has been doing is not working.
Yeah.
I've lived here since I was born here, and I've never seen it like this. It's never been like this, and whatever in these programs, I appreciate the efforts of the programs and all of it, it's all wonderful, and it's all part and parcel to the solution, but more needs to be done. Quickly.
Can I even leapfrog over what you just said? I mean, so one thing that Tina said when I interviewed her this summer was that, hey, maybe we ought to treat this like a crisis.
Yes.
That it is, and we have weekly press reports on what we're doing to address this emergency, not unlike what they were doing at BVSD during the COVID pandemic, where parents are up in arms and they want to know when my kids can go back to school and what's going on. So you have a press conference every Thursday or whatever that says, here, you know, so like the city council wants to go all in and treat this like a crisis. I think we should be ready to say, hey, we're here, we'll help you, you know. For me, it feels a little weird to try to jump out ahead of them. I don't, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Just more needs to happen, and that's my opinion.
I want to provide a little perspective. So Lee Hill, for example, is permanent supportive housing. So there's like a three-legged stool. There's a unit, there's a voucher for income, like rental payments, and then there is money available for caseworkers. That is a very holistic approach to how you help people who are unhoused, right? Bridge House has a different model, which takes a very small subset and says, if you're willing to follow our like plans and requirements and goals, we'll give you a place to live, we'll train you, we'll like do all those things. So those are both very like robust programs that sort of cover the gamut of housing and services and helping people. What I'm proposing that HAB do is not a holistic approach. It's let's just look at units that maybe cost $500 a month or $800 a month or $300 a month. Like, what are the various housing configurations that can be of different sizes and different price points, but not trying to solve mental health or addiction, or whether you have a job or where you get your income from, but just a cheap roof over your head where you pay rent.
And I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. That was the point I was agreeing with. I think as long as we're saying, even if it's $0 a month, if we're talking about housing solutions, then I think that's within our wheelhouse. Once we start veering into some of these broader issues, I think we're kind of running the risk of kind of where Terry, if you remember, you know, we kind of got into it a little bit with city council a while ago on the same kind of notion. But I think if we're talking about units and what we can do and how we can explore that and how we can kind of help be part of the solution, then I think that's something that you know, should be well received and is definitely something that, you know, within our capacity.
I have a tendency to oversimplify things, and I get that. But over here, we have a lot of people sleeping outside right now, and it's 20 degrees and freezing. And over here, we have a whole bunch of empty buildings all around town that have heat and water and a bathroom. There's gotta be a way we can put that together a little bit better than we've been doing it. That's what
Even if it's temporary,
even if it's
for you
just
to
a
do.
winter,
Yeah.
a month, I don't,
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying?
Without an autocrat taking over.
Sometimes you just gotta, it's extreme measures require extreme actions. That's a little oversimplification, I get it, but it's almost criminal in my mind. You're driving down the street, you see these poor people sleeping on the street, and I look over here and there's this empty building. It hasn't been rented in 3 years and nobody's gonna rent. You know what I mean? Hello?
Okay, I think we have a plan, and I think we have a lot of consensus on where to go on some of these issues, which is fantastic. So in my understanding, we will be circulating some red lines of this for the end of the year, so that on January 3rd, we can have a Zoom meeting, review a new draft, approve it or disapprove it, to send it to the city council as a precursor to what maybe comes letter number 2.
But we send it to you, right? We don't send it to everybody.
No, I don't think it's kosher to send it to everybody.
Okay.
Send it to me.
By
Uh,
what date? When do you need it by? So you can turn a draft around before January.
I think it's December 13th. I would say like December 22nd.
That's next week. Yeah. No. So comments to Michael by December 22nd. And Michael, you'll get a new draft out for the January 3rd special meeting.
Yes.
Jim, do you need anything else in terms of setting up the January 3rd special meeting?
Just need a vote. Make it official.
Do I hear a motion to hold a special meeting by Zoom on Wednesday, January 3rd? Danny, do I have a second?
Karen.
Anyone disagree with that? Yeah, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. We can continue with the agenda, which would be. item
Wait, did you have a
three.
different motion?
No, I just have a comment. Can I make a comment? It's kind of a meta comment to circle back to someone, Karen said a long time ago relating to, how to make a more powerful, more, a letter, because we were talking earlier about collaborative letters, and I just wanted to say one thing about that I kind of held on to, and that is for me, what that raises is what TAB did this year. And I'm not sure if TAB actually did it or if it was individuals within TAB, and I don't quite know how it is going to unfold. But members of TAB are really eager to get city council's shoulders shaken around parking minimums and get that to be a top priority this year. And so they made an extra effort to reach out to lots of different people in the community to get them signed on to their letter to get city council's attention. And I just want to put that out there as like, there is some precedent for if we have an issue that we really want, like, city council, pay attention. We want you to think about this, that there's strategies for doing that. And I kind of feel like one thing we might consider, as we're making plans for next year in the comp plan, is kind of have it in mind to have something ready like that for 2025 BVCP update.
Can you give examples of some of the partners that have the group
Well, I think it was mostly other advisory board members. So
from other advisory?
boards, yeah. I think I saw your name on it,
Oh,
honestly.
you did?
Hmm.
Yeah.
You did, you're right.
But
You did, you're right.
yeah.
They circulated it to planning board as well and asked
Yeah.
for individual members of planning board if you wanted to
Right.
sign on.
Anyways, something to think about is if we can deal on an issue to really push if it has like maybe zoning reform. When you talk about the 6 to 8 units in a building that looks like a McMansion, that's what I live for. I want to make that happen in Boulder. And so if there's something change we can make to the BVCP to help that happen, I would.
That's a big one.
Well, right, that's my point, is like, if we lead up to something that's big and we want to get attention for it, and we coalesce around an issue like that, then we could really, put together a letter that's kind of above and beyond the usual thing the usual projects that we do.
And focused on a specific issue, not a general letter like this.
Right.
Sounds good. Staff?
Nothing. Unless you have questions for me.
How are you doing, Jay?
Fantastic.
Good year at the city?
Huh?
Good year at the city? Everybody back? Nobody, how many people are back in the office?
Not very many.
Not really.
Is it like a couple days a week you need to go? in?
2 days a week typically is what the city says. I'm not sure how many people are actually doing it. But it's also sort of just certain days of the week too. So like if you go in the office on a Monday or a Friday, you won't see people. But if you're there on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, you might see more.
Interesting.
But it's just gotten more efficient for people to not go to the office and get on a Zoom call.
It's not going back, is it? Not going back.
No, and Alpine Balsam is progressing and they're still trying to figure out how do we basically consolidate all the city staff into one location.
Probably easier now,
When do we
right?
see drawings for that?
You will see, for the housing, you'll see drawings actually quite soon. I think they're still figuring out how to lay out, Alpine Balsam.
And there's a plan, correct me on this, if you need to sell some surplus city properties to help finance the Alpine Balsam vertical development.
Yeah, so I mean, that's parcel A, basically the northwestern corner of Alpine Balsam. Has pretty much always been envisioned for basically townhomes. For sale townhomes, so, but we have taken everything through form-based code, so all the infrastructure has gone through form-based code review, and then the actual design is coming up very shortly. And then basically a developer will be able to purchase that property, have all the entitlements, all the infrastructure stubbed in and be ready to go. So that, and then that proceeds from that sale will help subsidize the BHP's project on 2 of the other parcels. And there's a question about one of the other ones, which is the eastern corner. So we have a design for a building on that one, which is just a variety of unit types, everything from studios to 3 bedrooms. Whether or not that'll be ownership or rental, or if we just sell it entirely, will depend on how much everything else is gonna cost.
Townhomes on that northwest corner.
Mhm.
That word townhome makes me think no neighbors above or below. It's always neighbors to the
Correct.
side.
3 stories, tuck under garage, 2-car garage.
Is that, or they're creating a metro district to pay for the infrastructure?
No. That basically both Boulder Housing Partners and the city are co-master developing the site. So we'll put in all the horizontal infrastructure, and then it'll be whoever controls whatever parcel will be responsible for all the vertical. Does that make sense? Yeah. But there will be a parking district similar to Boulder Junction, like we've talked about. So all the, some principles, there'll be mobility. What are they called? The mobility, micro mobility spots.
Mobility hubs.
Mobility, thank you. Hub.
The tallest building is gonna be the city office building.
Yes,
What was it, 5 stories?
5 stories.
5 stories.
That's like-
55 feet.
Mhm.
It's the
So
medical
shorter
pavilion though,
ceilings.
right?
I'm sorry?
That's the medical pavilion,
Yes.
repurposing of an existing building.
I haven't actually seen the design, so I mean, I can't tell you for sure if there's on the 5th floor now or not.
But was that designed pre-COVID when everybody was showing up 5 days a week?
That's what I'm saying. It hasn't been fully designed yet.
Okay.
Because they're still trying to figure out what are the city's needs for office space.
Yeah.
Because I think we're learning how does hoteling work with staff. So basically, staff do not have offices anymore. We're supposed to reserve a space when we come in.
Okay. It's gonna be a lot of empty office space out there.
Consultants have been working with city staff for the last several months and doing a lot of design work.
Yep.
Seeing what we need, what we want, type of stuff.
If you make it attractive, people might come,
I think that's the
Tables, cakes.
So I think that's the challenge. Honestly, I think that's the challenge is that I think they underestimated how many people would be wanting to come into the office.
They underestimate.
Yeah.
Well,
So they have more demand than they have space for us right now.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't think that was the case.
Maybe it'll be the opposite.
Get out of the house.
okay, well, there were some good updates. Are we ready for item 7, meeting debrief and calendar check? Yeah, we had a good meeting, full participation, every member present in person or on Zoom. Excellent presentation from Melissa Klein on graduate student low to middle income housing assessment. Lots of great data that we can use in thinking about missing middle housing. We had one public participant comment in that period. We had a really good discussion with lots of changes proposed to our letter to the council, and decided the best way to process that discussion would be to have folks individually send a red line to me, the chair, by Friday, December 22nd. I'll digest those comments and we will discuss them at a special Zoom public meeting on Wednesday, January 3rd, and hopefully approve a final draft to send to council. And we have another January meeting on January 24th, where Christopher Johnson of Long Range Planning will come and discuss with us. How does this mysterious comp plan update actually work without the new influences? Which would be a really critical step to achieve some of the goals outlined in the letter, as they're currently prohibited in the comp plan until it is revised.
He's also a great person to ask about the planning reserve too and where that is.
Yeah, Shay, we have that in the letter. Weighed in on that. I mean, the airport is not the only game in town, there's planning reserve. And in the letter, we can be looking at surplus parking and other areas that can be redeveloped. So, any other thoughts? Happy holidays, everybody. Good meeting. Appreciate your participation, all the creative thought you put into this year. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Harry? In favor? Meeting is closed. Thank you very much.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Too.
Hey, can you get the note?
The what?
Get to the code. Get to the code, on the code.
See, that is exactly 8 o'clock.